Welcome to Signature Required. It is intended for Tennesseans by Tennesseans.
What makes them tick? What lights their fire?
We're pulling forward people that, unless you listen to this interview, you might not know a thing about them. The heart of a Tennessean, the volunteer state, is serve, and we do so largely without self-promotion.
And these are genuine people that get up every day and want to make art, or want to educate the nations, or want to have a heart of love in a way that makes a difference.
Learn from 50 years of experience, take a nugget away, and then go share it with a friend. Laura Scoggins, a real estate agent with Benchmark Realty, and Jenny Haines Douglas, Senior Loan Officer of Movement Mortgage. Welcome to Signature Required. We're excited to have you all.
Thank you so much. We're excited to be here.
Excited to be here. Yes, thank you.
We could take this topic in a really generic, boring direction, which would be
what everybody wants, right?
Yeah, housing prices are up and interest rates are up and it's tough in Tennessee. And all of those things are true. They're also really well established. Mm-hmm. So what I really hope to be able to do for our listeners in this podcast is to address and set the baseline for some things that are going on in the real estate industry. Like We'll spend a brief period of time probably telling most people a little bit of what they know, but where I hope to take for this is some strategy of saying, okay, that's, economics 100, but each of you have a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom in this space and have seen trends happen and develop over time. And so what I really hope is that our listeners by the end will be able to say, oh, okay, I know that was the case, but I learned something today that I didn't know before. And so I'm really excited to have both of you be able to talk from your experience. So let's just take it from the top of what is the state of real estate in Middle Tennessee as a whole, whatever direction you want to start it. Either one of you can kick that one off.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So, okay. I would say that we still have a healthy real estate market. We've seen some declines over the last year. 2024 was a challenge, but 2025 has really started to tick up starting in January. So,
and I think though, it's not that it's in a bad place because it's just not so much increasing, right? It's not going up as quickly as it has been over the past couple of years since the pandemic. So it's kind of slowing back down to be, I think, more of a normal market. It's normalizing. Yeah, I think that. So, yeah.
If you zoom out to maybe the highest vantage point and say, look at the last 20 years and say, all right, 2008 was the low point of pretty much everything, economically, cyclically, housing market. Tennessee did way better than most every state by any measurement because a lot of people were moving here. So maybe let's just start and look at the last 20 years worth of time. Has Tennessee benefited equally from that? What are the trends that you're seeing? Who's coming here? Why are they coming here? And what parts of the state are being impacted by that?
So 2008, we were pretty lucky. We did just see more of a leveling out of home prices instead of a dip. Now, if you had to sell in that time, you kind of got hit.
You felt it, yeah.
Yeah. But if you could hold on to it for a couple years, you really didn't feel a pinch.
And my perspective from people with interest rates and things, people that were foreclosing, and the reason why the housing market crashed was because they couldn't get out of the loans that they were put in 2 and 3 years before that. So that really led to the decline in prices. But now I don't feel like it's anything like that. I think that after 2008, 2009, when the rates started to kind of, at that time rates were at 6, 7, 8%. Then they started coming down to like the 4s and the 5s. And then we were pretty stable and the market just kind of evened out. And then you had that big increase back in, I think it was 2021 was really when it started, the beginning of 21, where the prices went up and appreciation went so far up that, and people were coming in from all over. So you have a lot of people moving from California, Illinois, and Florida even. I think the largest was Illinois with the percentage of people coming, which is funny. I see a lot of people from California, mainly for me. And I feel like the companies that are here, just everything that we've got going in Middle Tennessee and in Tennessee as a whole, are why people are called here. You know, it's a beautiful state, has all the seasons. I think that's important.
We have such a broad economy here in Nashville too that, you know, it's not, I know a lot of people think of us as Music City, but we have such a broad, you know, we've got healthcare, we've got so many companies moving here every day. So I think that's bringing a lot of people here. I also hear from clients that it's lower taxes.
Way lower taxes.
And politics.
I guess that's my question. You helped specifically relocate one of our team members here from Indiana, almost that Illinois area on the border. And the most important thing is trying to be near schools and trying to be near a Target, trying to be in these spaces where you can get groceries for your kids, you can make it to the pickup line, but you can also get to work. And so as we have done our own research about housing, the number of families, I just think this stat is really important. In 2023, approximately 28% of Tennessee households were considered cost burdened, which means they were spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And that included renters and homeowners with a mortgage. So as you're helping families move into the market and trying to hit these checklists of, I gotta be buying an In-N-Out burger, I gotta be able to go to Target in the pickup line, what should families be looking for to be able to be where they need to be, where they want to be, to keep that work-life balance?
Yeah, I think that they have to have an open mind in this market, and they have to, you know, you have to give at some point. So either you've got to give on location and go a little bit further out to find the home that you're looking for, or if it's really location that you're after, like your employee, then you've got to maybe give a little bit on your expectations with your home that you're going to buy. But I think first and foremost, you have to talk numbers with somebody and really get comfortable with your payment before we talk about home pricing.
Definitely, because that's the biggest part. Everybody's so driven to say, what is your rate? What is your rate? But it really comes down to, what are the monthly expenses that this house is going to have? Is it going to have a homeowners association fee that's going to add to the monthly cost? You know, what are the down payment options? Are we putting money down? Are we, you know, doing 100% financing? What does that monthly expense look like? So that's where I like to start with people. Well, with what I do is like, let's talk about what your goals are monthly financially, and then we kind of back into the numbers that way.
I think it's interesting that for decades and decades, American culture has been centered around home ownership, that you own your home. And the moment that you own your home is a really kind of made it moment of saying, okay, I now have something that, especially when that mortgage is paid off, like nobody can take this from me anymore. And over the last 20 years, there's been a little bit of a counter narrative to that, to say maybe renting is more viable than what we thought. And there's been different reasons for that, to say you don't have the cost of upkeep, you've got flexibility, you don't have to ride out the waves of economic cycles. And so I'm interested for each of you, because each of you sit in roles that probably benefit more from home ownership rather than renting, but knowing also that you sit across from people that sometimes it is in their best interest to rent, at least until ownership becomes right for them in the future. So I don't know, Jenny, maybe take this first. When you're sitting and talking to somebody that's trying to think about the reality of home ownership, how do you counsel them through that as they're trying to assess, is it time for me to go into this place?
Well, first I would like to comment on, you said like people get into houses and then they're getting close to paying it off, right? And the way that everything is now, it feels like a lot of people are moving more frequently. You don't see a lot of people staying in their homes for 20 or 30 years anymore. They're moving maybe, I think the national average might be 5 to 7 years is the reality of what people are moving around for. So I always like to start with, what are your long and short term goals, right? So what do you plan on, how long do you plan on being in this home? Depending on, you know, we also look at like their age and kind of, you know, where they see themselves 5, 10, you know, years down the road. And also look at kind of where the economy is, because you can buy a home, especially right now and over the past several years, you buy a home let's say you bought a house in 2021. Well, you had some massive appreciation gains at that time. So if they came to me and they were at that time and they were saying, well, we're thinking that we might only be here 2 to 3 years. Well, at that point, they have a huge advantage to own because the way that the property is going to appreciate over a certain time. Yes, it's slowed. It's not going down by any means. It's actually just kind of gotten to more normal levels, but they've seen a lot of increase, which is making them a lot of money, even though they're only going to be there for a certain amount of years. And so we look at that. And then also look at it financially. What is it going to cost for them to actually get into a home, right? So what does that down payment look like? What do those payments look like? And we compare that to where they're going to be with rent. Because if they're going to live somewhere for 2 years, they're going to pay $2,400 a month or whatever that rent might be. How much money is that versus how much money that we're actually going to gain, but with appreciation and minus that with certain expenses that would come with home ownership, and kind of weigh it out that way. Just look at the numbers with it in addition to their goals.
Laura, how about you? How do you counsel people when they're trying to make that decision?
We talk about payment. We also talk about that, rent does increase. It's not a stable number. It does increase. So that's something that they need to consider. But also it's their lifestyle. If you are a young person and you don't quite know where your career is going to take you, rental, especially in this market where we're not seeing the huge margins and growth of equity, that could be a great option. If you're an older person who doesn't want to keep up with the maintenance of a home, renting can be a great option for you. So I don't think it's always a one size fits all that you have to buy a home. I think renting benefits a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of what I'm hearing you guys do feels a little bit like your counselors. It really does feel like you have to be both a professional in what you're doing, but also you really have to get to the heart of the issue, which is you don't want somebody to end up upside down. And financial stress is one of the top 3 stressors on any family. And financial stress is one of the number 1 causes of divorce in marriages. I mean, you can look that up. So I wonder, how do you kind of carry that burden of working with families or individuals and knowing like they're coming to you, you're the expert, but you have to kind of parse out, this is my job, but also what is in their mental best interest in that moment. And sometimes that's probably fun. And sometimes that's probably less fun.
It makes you nervous a little bit. And I find the best thing is to just try to get to know each person the best that I can to really help to figure out where they're at and where they want to be and just understand them as a person and then just give them the details and get so they can make their own decision.
But it is a challenge for both of us. We do discuss this, that it is a challenge for both of us to not take their stuff home with us. Like at the end of the night, we both personally struggle with that.
Yeah.
Well, it's part of the mental load, right? Everyone carries a mental load. I like to think of it like a backpack. And there are just stones that get put in your backpack, and it's like people like in the Parent Trap are sneaking them in the back of your backpack and you're trying to climb a mountain. And so I just was wondering about that, if that mental load got heavy.
It's challenging.
Yeah.
It does. We have each other to talk to about that. Like, we got to let that go. Got to let it go.
Thank goodness for community.
Yes.
Laura, one other trend that I've seen over time is whether to purchase something new, something used, or something that's a real fixer-upper. And, when you think about it, when you're purchasing a car, we've pretty much settled on the fact that if you purchase a new car, the moment you drive off the lot, you're down 10%, best case. And if you purchase a used car, it's thought that asset pace of decline is not going to be quite as quick. But at the end of the day, the thing still declines as you put miles on that vehicle. When you think about home ownership, we've seen popular trends on TV and otherwise that fixing up a house has never been more cool to broadcast on television. And I just
It would probably help
wonder-
if we were handy, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know enough to know that however that project turned out ain't how it's going to turn out for me. That is not how it's going to turn out.
That doesn't work for our skill set. But.
Yeah, I have some giftings in some places. That is not one of them. You will not find me doing that. But
And you don't want me on a ladder. Like, my clumsy self does not need to be on a ladder. Yeah.
So when you think about sitting across from an individual or a couple that does have that skill, that they're maybe not able to build the house from the ground up, but like they've got some skill to be able to do some fixing, How does that factor into the counseling that you might give when someone is looking at a home from a place of appreciation? Okay, so they're coming to you and sitting down and saying, we're going to be here for 10 years, and we want to know that our home is going to be worth more in 10 years as best as you can forecast that for us. How do you talk them through that new, used, or like really used?
I think that it's about the counseling, right? Like what is their actual ability? Am I gonna come to your home in a couple of years and it's gonna be very DIY, I mean, no offense by that.
Yeah,
But some
no,
people
yeah.
think that they're handy, but it's not, it doesn't look professional.
Yeah.
And they,
There's a
and they
craftsman
need somebody besides the spouse to tell them that is potentially true.
Yes. And so it's a hard conversation.
Yep. Mental load.
Yeah. So it's the ability. What is their actual ability to do that? Or what is their monetary ability to pay somebody to do the work? And, Jenny does have some loan options that can help with something like that. But yeah, it just depends. Also, first time home buyers, for instance, a lot of times it's great to buy new construction because everything's brand new. So yes, you drive off the lot and you lose a little bit of value, but you have brand new HVAC system, you have brand new water heater, brand new roof, all the things.
warranties, all the stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's a major plus for a lot of people.
As that is interesting because if you're kind of stretching to meet a down payment and a monthly payment and it's a fix up, then almost certainly whether you want to begin the project immediately or not, that project kind of involuntarily begins because your HVAC goes out or your hot water heater goes out. You start getting $500 here, $2,500 here, and that adds up quickly.
100%.
Oh, yeah. Last time we
Yes.
moved, it was August and the air conditioning broke the day of
The
our
first
move.
day.
Yeah.
No.
And it was like, we could probably limp this for like 4 years. We knew it was going to need some help. And no, that was a first day project.
yeah,
and that's
So
tough.
Yeah.
that does happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And hopefully you have the cash to cover that, right? Or
yeah,
else
and that's the
it's-
planning part, right? It's like otherwise you're in trouble right away. So Jenny, maybe take that of just from a financing perspective. If Laura sends you a couple that is looking at a house where they're intentionally saying, hey, we want to do some work on this place. We need money for that. So the home value is here, whatever it's appraising at, but we need another $150,000 worth of work to really invest in this place. How does that look in terms of what a mortgage would get structured like?
So we would then look at, okay, what is needed, what is going to be done at this 150,000, right? And what does that entail? And then what is the after repair value of that? So once you do that work, is that going to bring, because sometimes people will do renovations and it's not bringing as much value as they think that it will because of, maybe the market's different or something like that. So it depends on what exactly they're wanting to do.
Oh, that's interesting.
Their finishes are too high for the neighborhood.
Or the neighbor-
put
right.
marble in a home that everybody else has solid surface countertops,
Yeah, and they don't get as much return for it. So we try to analyze that. And then we'll actually, if they're doing a type of renovation loan, we'll submit that bid to the actual appraiser, and the appraiser is going to appraise it based on those upgrades.
Oh, interesting.
So that's how that works, to make sure that it's going to be right in line with where, we don't want them to do these home improvements and borrow an extra $150,000 and then it not appraise. So we'll appraise it up front before the renovations are done. And then that way we make sure that we're right in line with that.
And then it becomes kind of like a construction loan, right? Like with the
It is like
the
withdrawals.
repairs and-
You go ahead, you close on the loan. So let's say you're buying a house for $300,000. You're putting $150,000 into it. The new purchase price becomes $450,000. So then all of the down payment, closing costs are associated with that $450,000 price, and that's when it's appraised. And then we close on the loan, and then the contractor will be given draws similar to construction, and they do the construction within a 6 to 8 month period.
But that's not DIY.
That's not DIY.
That's not
And I guess that would be my biggest question because
Yeah.
data shows that because the housing market has gotten so expensive
Yeah.
in Middle Tennessee, that actually home renovations and improvement numbers have gone up. Yeah, the Home Depots of this world are doing well right now.
Yeah.
So I know you can't say definitively, and it depends on the neighborhood, et cetera. But what if somebody's listening to this and like, I wonder if this renovation would do something good for my value, what are the normally blanket statement best things you could do to increase the value of your home?
Square footage.
Okay.
I think that is the number one when you're adding square footage, because if you really look, and I've seen tougher markets where it came down to square footage and where your location is. Sometimes, granite, different finishings don't get looked at as much as you think that they would on an appraisal.
Yeah, square footage adds immediate value.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's a measurement,
Right.
But then I would say bathrooms,
Kitchens.
kitchens. But don't do anything until you have a real estate professional come and like actually give you advice in person,
Yeah.
because you may not need to spend that money in order to sell your home and get it ready. It could be a waste of money, but bathrooms, kitchens, for sure.
And square footages. Pools don't add as much as you would think.
Yeah, I was going to say, where's the best way to
getting
waste
value.
it? Let's say we just want to light money
Pools.
on fire.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
pools don't get as much return.
Okay.
Barbecue pits, sometimes I think that those might be, it depends on what you've got set up back there. But
Okay.
I mean, like a lot of people will put in a pool and it costs, $50,000 and it gives them maybe 10 to 15,000 in value, which is shocking to some people when they see that. And they're like, wait a minute, I spent 50,000 on this pool and it's only what? And I'm like, I know some people don't want pools. So when you're looking to resell, sometimes houses with pools will sit a little longer too.
There's also market value though too, not just appraisal value. So it can also be, that the finishes that you have or you've designed it so well that people love it and want to buy it
That's true.
regardless of appraisal value.
That's true. It's very different. It can be very different appraisal value and market value.
Well, and so much of what you guys have to do is be educators because, we've purchased homes together, but all of these nuances are really project by project. So just because you aren't a first-time homeowner doesn't mean that you know all of the nuances of what you're getting into. And so it's having somebody willing to take the time and take you line by line and really think through all of the moving pieces, because you really don't want to get blindsided. You're already managing a move, which is stressful enough. You also don't want to get blindsided by an extra check.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And we walk through that. Like we'll sit down once you get a contract in, or once I get a contract in, I sit down and I go over all the numbers, right? So this is what your total cash at closing is with the seller doing this, and, and make sure that they, everybody understands this is what we're bringing, instead of going to the closing table and being like, oh, I need another $10,000 or whatever, the case may be.
A question. If the average, I think you said earlier, the average person is moving now maybe every 5 to 7 years. So
Yeah.
you will get, if you've been doing this 20 years, you will get some repeat
Yes.
clients, but your bread and butter probably isn't repeat clients. So what are you hoping for? Are you hoping for word of mouth? How does that business model really work?
Referrals. Absolutely. Most of my business is referrals. I don't really do a lot of marketing and all of that because I just really enjoy my relationships and I build relationships with people, and I love referrals. You actually work with people more often than every 5 to 7 years, though, because people refinance every,
That's true.
1 to 2 years?
1 to 2 years. I don't know exactly what the statistics are, and I'll have to look up like the national average now for the times that people move. It's about 7 years, but it's staying in touch with your database, right, and the people that you've worked with in the past.
It's such a complicated process. What the buying of your home, the selling of your home, and the mortgages. I feel like everybody sees that, rates have gone down. The Fed's lowered the rate. Why aren't mortgage rates lower? It's just such a large, complicated industry.
Yeah, it's trying to just reduce it down into its simplicity, though, one step at a time. I find that's easiest.
Well, and we always say, because we're big on educating people to speak, but if you can't explain it to your 5-year-old, then you probably don't know it well enough. Even the most technical stuff, if you can't distill it down. And I would say, and I'll just make fun of myself, if I had to come to you for the first time doing this, the first time we bought a home decades ago, I would have felt like a 5-year-old trying to learn this content. And I think that's how a lot of people feel the first time they're putting their name on the line. So I feel like that is accurate. If you can't distill it down and make it simple, then they're probably working with the wrong people.
I agree. And it's, there's so many different terms. I mean, people are like, your DTI, your LTV. And people are like, what does that mean? And it's scary, escrows, what is that? And so when I walk into a room and people are using terms and words that I don't really understand, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to be quiet and just shake my head. Okay. Yeah, whatever you say. But I don't want it to be like that. You want people to understand what kind of loan they're getting into, what the terms are with the house, the property, all of it.
And just remember, buying one home, selling one home is not a matter of life and death. Like, you're going to be okay. You're going to get through it. It's not nearly as scary as you might think it is. But as long as you trust the people who are walking the path with you, you are going to be okay.
That's good. One thing that we do towards the end of each of our podcasts is we give a little fill in the blank exercise. Okay. So I read a short sentence, and then each of you will fill in the blank for that short sentence. The only thing I ask is you just read the sentence back to me and then fill in the blank. Okay, so I'll start off with you, Jenny, on one, and then we'll just bounce between the two of you on each of this. Okay,
do it right.
All right, here we go. The best kept secret about financing a home in Tennessee is blank.
The best kept secret about financing a home in Tennessee is that you get to work with me.
That was perfect.
I like that.
Yeah.
Do you want to chip in on that, Laura, or do you want to? Because I know financing is not necessarily your thing, but it very well could be. So
The best kept secret about financing a home in Tennessee, I would say, is the 100% financing program options.
That's good.
No down payment needed.
That's a good start. All right. Here's number 2. We'll go right back to you, Laura, and then we'll go Jenny, since we started with Jenny. If I were advising a first-time home buyer today, I would tell them blank.
If I were advising a first-time home buyer today, I would tell them this is the best time they could possibly buy. Due to your ability to negotiate for closing costs, rate buy downs, negotiate price, and not be competing with 10, 20 other buyers.
That's been wild over the last 5 years for sure.
And there's so many 100% financing options too.
All right, Jenny, you want to take a crack at that one? If I were advising a first-time home buyer today, I would tell them blank.
If I were advising a first-time home buyer today, I would tell them not to be nervous about starting the process and looking over everything in their financial picture. Because a lot of people are intimidated about that. They're worried that their credit will get messed up. They're worried about what we're going to think about their income, or whatever kind of hesitations people have, they're just really nervous about it. We'll talk through it together. So that would be my advice to them.
The fear of the unknown.
The fear of the unknown, yeah.
This would be interesting. You all might disagree on this. Who should a first-time home buyer start with first?
Lender.
Okay. I thought I might get a disagreement there. I bet a lot of people would miss that question. I bet a ton of people call Laura first and then say, oh, well, I can't afford that. And then it goes the opposite way.
That's exactly how it works. It's really, real estate is an emotional purchase, I feel like, for a lot of people. And they don't want to even talk to me until they've kind of emotionally attached themselves to a property. I see that all the time.
They're very afraid to talk to the lender. They want to talk about the money. But any buyer should talk to a lender first. I don't care if you're buying your 10th home or your first home.
All right, here's the last one. The biggest misconception about buying a home in Tennessee right now is blank.
The biggest misconception about buying a home in Tennessee right now is that the prices are going to come down after a certain time. I think that this area, the whole state of Tennessee, is very strong in real estate. I feel like the prices are going to continue to appreciate. I don't feel like they're going to come down at all.
Laura, do you have a different one on that, or to echo that?
I would agree that the market is stable. And if you're going to wait for home prices to come down, I think you're going to miss the boat.
There's still 80 people a day moving to Tennessee. It is amazing, that statistic, 80 every day. You can tell it by looking at the interstates. Let me tell you that.
Gosh,
that is no lie.
It is crazy.
I really appreciate having you all here because you embody the spirit of entrepreneurship in a way that lets you connect to people at a lot of different levels. So thank you for doing some great things for the entire state of Tennessee, for Middle Tennessee, and people helping realize their dreams.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
Laura Scoggins, real estate agent with Benchmark Realty, and Jenny Haines Douglas, senior loan officer at Movement Mortgage. There was a lot of educational content in that one. And I think the stats that we could just layer on for that podcast are immense. It's like some of the ones that we had pulled up. You mentioned approximately 28% of Tennessee households were considered cost burden, which means they're spending more than 30% of their household income on housing.
And if that's renters and buyers, I thought, because sometimes you think one might be easier than the other, but it's across all demographics.
Another stat Another stat, just looking at the last 5 years, home prices in Nashville have increased by 53%. And I see that. I mean, if you already are here, you're thankful for that. I mean, clearly your investment is appreciating, but for people that own and realize that their cost of ownership is also going up with their price of their home, it can also become too expensive to keep living there. Taxes change, cost of living changes, and it's very much a double-edged sword. And if you haven't already bought, then you're paying a huge premium for a price that this house was $500,000 4 years ago, and now it's $800,000, $900,000. I mean, it's crazy what is going on in the space.
Well, and I think it's happening across Tennessee. We talked a lot about Middle Tennessee and specifically Nashville, and I know it's not in every single county, is not to this same degree, but it's not just here. People are moving to Tennessee. I know Davidson County is taking the brunt. I think, what is it, like 24% of the people moving to Tennessee. But gosh, that's 76% of the 80 people moving here every day are going to other places besides Davidson, Williamson County. And so it's not just a problem here.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to it, that 1 in 3 home sales in Nashville are being made in all cash, which is particularly intimidating because getting a loan is a huge part of purchasing any home. And to know that you're competing against mostly people that are coming in from out of state, where, they come from California and say, well, a home like this in Tennessee, if you looked at it in California, it would be $3 million, but this home is $750,000. I mean, those are real differences of figures that they sell their home in California, in New York, in Chicago, and then they're able to take just the equity that they have in their house there and buy a house here in cash.
I think a lot of great things are happening in Tennessee, and I think there's a lot of really good reasons why people are moving here. I mean, the whole reason for this podcast is what makes Tennessee. Why should people want to be here? Why is this special? But there's this tension, right, of, Tennessee is special because we live and value certain things, and there's this emotional concern that people moving here may not share our values. But then there's also this economic concern of, hey, just because you have all of these dollars in California or New York or other places coming in, there are very real needs for families. We were just talking with an educator trying to find high quality teachers at their school, and they cannot find teachers because people can't live in Middle Tennessee on a teacher salary in a lot of cases unless they already live here. They can't relocate here. It creates a really true tension for what we want and how we want this part of our state and our country to stay.
Well, housing affordability, unlike a lot of different problems, it's not that difficult to diagnose the problem and the solution, because the problem is that there is not enough supply. I mean, that's it. We are not going to be able to regulate, nor should we regulate, someone's ability to buy something. Like, the demand side is unfixable. We don't want to make Tennessee less desirable. We don't want to say that you have to go through, some type of proof of loyalty test to be able to buy in Tennessee. Like, none of those things
That'd
are
be really
consistent.
funny, though. I'd let you write it.
Yeah.
And I'd love to read it. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't be constitutional, but that'd be really funny.
Yeah, we'll test how they say certain words, certain cities across the state, counties that, can you pronounce this county? And we'll know immediately.
Like, you
whether
can't
they're
live in
from-
Davidson County if you can't say Demumbrian.
That's exactly
That should
right.
be
It's
it,
not
yeah.
Demon Bruin downtown. It's Demumbrian. So yeah, there's a lot of different things like that. But in any case, the supply issue is the problem. And so looking at the incentives for why more single family and multifamily residences are not being built at the pace that is needed is squarely where we have to focus. The solution is there. It's a supply side problem, not a demand side problem.